Hi guys, so I've put together this brief presentation on how to conduct an in-depth qualitative interview, particularly for the guys, the early career and medical students that we're working with in and doing some research with, but largely also for anyone that's interested in being able to do qualitative interviews. So I'll, I'll be going through um, giving a short introduction to qualitative works and then giving some tips and tricks on how to do an in-depth qualitative interview. So as you know that a qualitative data collection, um, there are many tools and ways to do qualitative data collection, and whichever approach that you're going to take depends on the objective of your study, your research question. So you're going to use the method that best answer your research question. So whether you want to do in-depth interview, which is the one I'm going to really talk about uh, a lot more today, or you want to do focus group discussion, which focuses on understanding group dynamics and shared views of a group. Another way to collect qualitative data is through live insights, key informant interviews, and then you could also take field notes and observations where you are looking for like non-verbal cues and all of that. So if you want to do an in-depth interview, which is the one-on-one interview, usually you do in-depth interviews you can do it for a phenomenology study. You can use it to like get somebody's experience, or you can also use it to get like context and in-depth understanding of a particular concept. So um before you will dive into doing like an in-depth interview, you really need to understand the study. What study do you want to do? What study are we talking about? For if you need to understand the method of the study quite well, the aims and objectives, as well as uh, you know, or the research question, what do you really want to answer? So you need to understand that, and it will be good for you to have done some literature review, so that as a follow-up to really understanding the study. So this will give you a good basis for the in-depth interview that you want to will conduct. And it's also usually you will have an interview guide that will guide you, that will act as prompt for your interview. Usually they're like open-ended questions, and this is something that you can just I'll go through. They are not scripts, but they are like guides for you as you're asking the questions. So as I've mentioned, it will be good for you to have your proposal, your protocol, and you will have gotten ethical approval, because if you are doing in-depth interview, that's a study that involves human participants, and that means that you need to have gotten ethical approval. You have done all of that. I'm just using this particular presentation to focus so much on how to actually conduct the interview. So I believe that anybody that wants to do in-depth interview, you have subject matter knowledge and you understand the study quite well. So it is just about really conducting the interview that I'm going to focus on. So um while you are doing the interview, so during the interview, I believe that you will want to start with by introducing yourself and then introducing the study that you are doing to the person. It's nice to actually just get to kind of know them and build rapport, and they might just be talk on any common thing that you share, to build rapport with them and explain what you want to do, get their consent, and I'll preferably get their consent on record. But if you cannot do that, sometimes it's better to have like a written consent. But so I prefer to actually get their consent on record. So when click on recording, when I start recording, I will get their consent so that that can be on record as well. So now you have your prompt, which you are using for the interview. So that's like the guide. So use it as guide, but not as don't use it as you don't have to read through everything. And I'm saying you don't have to read through everything, because sometimes when you ask an interviewee a particular question, they've addressed other things. within that your interview. If there's other things within that your guide, so you don't have to go back to say I'm just taking this like a checklist. So you have to be careful about that. Then you have to avoid guiding or leading the interviewee. So don't make it put words into their mouth. So don't put your thoughts into their mouth. This is the interviewer, so interview. So you need to listen to them and allow them to talk. It's okay sometimes to ask relevant follow-up questions to really understand. And I will talk about when you might need to intervene to guide, but you have to be very, very careful about that. And then allow participants to tell their story. It is not your story, so you stay back and allow them to tell their story. Now, what are the technical and practical considerations for doing a qualitative interview? Usually, I always like to have a backup recording device. So I will record through with one device, and then I also have a backup recording device. The reason for that is just peradventure you lose any of the recording, you want to have it elsewhere. Because qualitative interview, it's a rigorous process, and you don't want to go back. Even finding participants, you want to go back looking for the participant and saying, "Will you be able to give us another time to interview you?" So it's good to have a backup device. And other than also the recording, it proper, and I think it is even recommended to take like field notes. And when I say field note, they are not necessarily things that are in the interview, but they are also things like related data. So for instance, if I'm interviewing someone and I'm getting their perspective on a totally different thing, but then they are now mentioning about their own personal details which I need for like maybe social demographics and all of that, I can note that as my field note on it. So they are not particularly content of the interview, but they are like related data. So I take field notes for those things. And like I said, you don't want to ask already answered question because you are trying to go through the checklist of your prompt. And you also want to respect participants' boundaries. And the reason for that, I'm saying that because sometimes they are not comfortable to talk about something, especially if you're doing like a phenomenology, and if they are not comfortable to talk about something or share a particular experience. So you have to respect that boundary and prioritize their comfort so that you can get good data out, and also for ethics purposes. So at the end of your interview, you want to sincerely thank your participant for giving you time, and then you explain to them what becomes of the data that they have given you. It's appropriate to explain what you are going to do, and if you will be able to keep them updated on the work, you should also mention and that as well. Now, like I mentioned that there are instances where you might need to guide participants, or when you might need to ask questions. So maybe they say something briefly, and this is really relevant to the study, but then they just mention it in passing. You might ask them for clarification so that they talk about expand that thing a bit more. And sometimes if participants go completely off topic and they start saying things that are irrelevant, so you start giving your necessary details, that and that dominates a large portion of the interview. So you might want to really guide them back on topic, not necessarily telling them what to say, but kind of guiding them back on course and bringing them in relation to or what the study is about. And sometimes if they misunderstand your question or what you've asked like a prompt, so you might want to kind of bring them back and guide them to say explain what you actually meant. But like I said, don't make it don't lead the interview. So give them opportunity to actually talk and let the discussion flow naturally, and don't dominate the conversation. So for you to be a good qualitative interviewer, you need to be an active listener. So you are listening so that you can ask relevant follow-up questions, so that you can know if they've said things that you don't have to go back to ask them again because it's on your prompt. You need to be patient and empathetic. As I said, prioritize the person's comfort, because sometimes and boundaries. Sometimes they are not comfortable to talk about something, and you don't want to or cause any harm in the process of doing an interview. You should be biased You should be neutral, sorry, and non-judgmental when you're doing a qualitative interview. So don't say, oh, and don't even allow any of that kind of emotion to show on your or face, even if you don't agree with something. But that's the reason why you are doing a study. Yeah, even if something does not align with your own personal experience, that's why you're doing a study, to actually bring out different people's perspective, and it is their own perspective, not yours. So it doesn't have to be aligned with yours, but do not appear to be judgmental, be neutral. And like I said, cultural sensitivity and empathy is very important, because you want to really respect people's boundary. And it is good for you to, like I said, know the topic well enough, know the study well enough, have a good subject matter expertise, and be knowledgeable about the topic. So when you're done with the interview, um like, as you want to thank them, you explain what becomes of the data and everything, and what you do next to them. And once you've done that, you will it will be good to actually tag your interview immediately. So you write a feed note and tag that interview. So whether you want to, or for instance, depending on what you're using to record, it could be like through Zoom call, or through or this video call. It could be through, or if you're using audio recording device. But immediately you will want to put a name to that and tag that in, and attach the necessary tag and label, or to that your or thing to that your recording, and then back up your recording securely, whether online and all of that, and ensure also the security of the recording. So I mean, later on you might need to transcribe, depending on how you want to do, but you might need to transcribe the interview and then anonymize, take out personally identifying information and all of that, before you now begin to code and do an analysis. So it's good to reflect on your role and how you've performed, because and what you can do better on the subsequent interview that you want to take. So just a few additional tips are for doing a qualitative in-depth interview. So ensure that you will pilot test your interview guide. So that will really help you to know if there are lapses anywhere. It's also good for you to actually do like a face validity with some experts in that field and get their thoughts. So you might need to share the interview guide with them, and they will see, and they will be able to let you know if there are things that you could include. You could, or you are leading here, or you could phrase this question better, and all of that. Yeah, while you be conscious of time, please, you have to be careful not to, or be seen to be hasting the participant. So we want to prioritize their comfort and natural flow of conversation. Yeah, avoid too many questions, because sometimes they've mentioned something, you don't have to take them back to it, because it's on your checklist, and ensure that the data is secure. Data is secure. It's not something that different people just have access to. Only people that need to have access to the data have access to the data. Anonymize when you do your transcript eventually, and ensure that you respect the privacy of the person. And finally, be respectful to the participant, and because they are the expert of their own experience and opinion, and don't be seen to take over or dominate the conversation or guide them. Yeah, so I think that is all. I'll just say that if you want maybe further tips and tricks on doing research generally, or doing qualitative work, you can check out the website as well as the LinkedIn account. All right. Thank you very much.